The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, access to safe drinking water is one of the most basic requirements of any society, and the failure that we have seen in Havelock North over the last few days is totally unacceptable. That basic requirement that Kiwi families can turn on the tap, drink the water and expect it to be safe and not to get sick is about as basic of the requirements that we have of councils. I want to support the speech by my colleague Craig Foss, who said absolutely correctly that the focus today has to be on ensuring the people of Havelock North can get access to safe water, ensuring that those people that are sick are getting access to the very best of health services at both secondary and primary level, and that the information is distributed as efficiently as possible to his community and they get the support that they need. Mr Speaker, there will be a time where an inquiry gets to the bottom of the questions that the people of Havelock North and members of Parliament would want answered. We need to know what was the source of the contamination. We want to know, could the contamination have been picked up earlier? We want to know whether the testing regime that the Hastings Council had was appropriate and was responded to at the correct time. We should ask the question as to whether there should have been a precautionary approach to the chlorination of that particular water supply. We want to know whether the response from Council when they got those test results was appropriate and whether the communications were fast enough. They are the right questions, but I would challenge members to try and answer those at this point. I think it's important that we note the facts that we do know. The Hastings Council has said that this water supply had clear results last Tuesday. We know that test samples were taken last Thursday, that on the Friday the Council advises that they delivered a negative result on the E. coli. We know that that day they informed the District Health Board. We know that day they began chlorination. We know that Campylobacter, which is the most likely source of the contamination based on the test results that have been provided today, does have an incubation period of a number of days, so it's not proper for members to automatically conclude that people that are getting sick today could necessarily have been able to pick up. That is proper for an inquiry. Mr Speaker, I want to make plain the response that there has been from government that has been conveniently overlooked by members opposite. The fact is the Ministry of Health convened the National Health Coordination Centre. Immediately they were notified by the Council. We know the DHB did seek support and the Ministry of Health immediately provided 3 of their expert staff from the point of view of a water engineer, an emergency manager and a communications advisor. We know the Ministry of Civil Defence Emergency Management Committee has offered every support to the Hastings District Council. We know the Ministry of Primary Industries has stepped in to check in terms of the supply of safe food, and we know that the Ministry of Health has been working as closely as possible with the Hastings District Council. And so the claims that have been made by members opposite repeatedly in this debate that the government has done nothing is simply incorrect. I would also say to members opposite that in claiming the standards are not appropriate, they sound misinformed, because we have here the National Environment Standards for drinking water standards that could only have been breached by the incident that has occurred in Havelock North, those national environment standards for which I am responsible. And I question members opposite who incorrectly claimed in this debate that somehow members on this side or standards think what has occurred is acceptable, as well as those national environment standards. As the member who interjects clearly didn't hear the contribution from New Zealand First. And then we come to the issue of the standards by the Ministry of Health on drinking water that also clearly have been breached. This is a bit like the Canterbury earthquakes, Mr. Speaker, where members opposite will use anything for a sort of political desperation to try and make politics out of issues. Let's just go through a few of the desperate claims from members. Firstly, they criticised Craig Foss. Well, Craig Foss was on the phone on me on Sunday, raising quite appropriately the issue. They said he had done nothing. These are the same members that continuously claim and have told Sam Littlewinga that he shouldn't interfere in council's water supplies, and when something goes wrong in a council water supply, the first thing they want to do is to blame the government. Mr. Speaker, there was, and if there had been, application and support from the Hastings Council that there was a problem with this water supply and we had not responded with funding. There might be attempts for members opposite, but that is clearly not the case in this situation and is thus another case of opposition members trying to join the dots. What this House should do is to, and I commend the Green Party, is to say this is serious, but before we start pointing the finger, before we start attributing blame, before we start saying what are the right conclusions to draw, there needs to be a full and proper inquiry, and the government has made plain that that will occur, but that will occur secondary to the immediate priorities for the community of Havelock North, and that is to ensure that there is the proper health services, that there is the proper immediate response occurring today. Mr. Speaker, I again say what has occurred in Palmerston in Havelock North is totally unacceptable. Basic access to safe drinking water is at the core of what councils are required to provide. We have a national environment standard for watercourses that are used, including aquifers, for drinking water. That has been breached. We have a Ministry of Health drinking water standard that has been breached. We need to get to the bottom of why that has occurred and ensure that we do not see again hundreds, potentially thousands of New Zealanders becoming unwell because of the sort of contamination that has occurred in the Havelock North water supply.
The time for this debate has expired. Call on government orders of the day numbers 1 and 2.
Interrupted debate on the third reading of the Appropriation 2016-17 Estimates Bill and the second reading of the Impress Supply second for 2016-17 Bill.